Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode here on the All In, or excuse me, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. I got my boy Jordan Bowman in the back waiting to join us. Boy, do we have a show for you tonight. It is finally game week. Monday night, our Clemson Tigers face off against the Duke Blue Devils on a standalone game in front of the entire nation, and I cannot wait for this game to kick off. I know you guys are ready as well, but before that, we have a full weekend of college football starting tonight all the way through Sunday until our Clemson Tigers play on Monday. But tonight, we're going to break down the Clemson Tigers against the Duke Blue Devils tonight. And you're not going to want to miss it. We got a ton of stuff for you guys tonight. It's going to be exciting. I cannot believe that it is finally game week, but I'm so excited it is here, guys. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Hit that like button for us. This is a live video. Likes really help us out. Subscriptions really help us out. And guess what, guys? It's free. So help us out. Help us grow the channel. Share this channel. Share this video with all of your college football groups, all of your Clemson Tiger groups, and all of that sort of stuff. We really do appreciate it. You guys are what make the show possible. You guys are what make the show worth watching. And we really do appreciate you guys to get in here, get in our live chat, get in our comment section, and make the magic happen. So thank you so much. Also, subscribe to the main channel, The Voice of College Football. That is Mark Rogers, okay? He is the one that graciously gives me and Jordan Bowman this platform in order to talk to you guys about all things Clemson Tigers, all things Clemson football. So shout out to him. Give him a subscribe. Listen to all his live shows that he does every single week. One of the smartest guys you will ever meet that talks college football. So go check him out. That is the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers. But without further ado, I'm going to bring on my co-host, my buddy, fan favorite, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Amazing, man. Amazing.
Can you
We are
believe it?
finally here.
Can you
We're
believe
finally
it?
here.
It's game week. Can you believe it?
I I can't. I've been procrastinating all week, basically just biding my time,
Yeah,
knowing this day was coming, and I was like, man, once we get this, it's gonna feel real once we do this first pregame show, and we've actually made it. It was a an off season to remember. Um, and I'm just glad that football's back.
absolutely.
We've got some really good games going on in we have a really good game going on in an hour that I can't wait to check out as well. So we won't hold you guys too long tonight, but we're just going to talk strictly Clemson Duke, and yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, it is not going to be a super long show tonight. We are going to do the Duke preview, the Duke breakdown. We will talk about Clemson's offense versus their offense versus our defense. We'll talk little special teams, and then we'll get a little score prediction out, and we'll get out of here. Because guess what? College football starts tonight, and I know you guys are excited, and you're a bunch of degenerates like us, so you're definitely going to watch the Florida Utah game coming tonight. If you guys have not already, I put a poll out in our community tab asking who you're taking versus the spread. So when we go to do the pick versus the spread tonight at the end of the show, and when we go to do our score prediction, I will pull that up and see how our channel or those who have voted on our poll feel about the spread with Duke versus Clemson, which is minus 13 uh, as of today. Subject to change throughout the weekend, but as of today, it's minus 13 for our Clemson Tigers. Jordan, we have waited 8 months for this. 8 long months. The All In show has been going on, and finally we get into game previews starting right now, man. These Duke Blue Devils, a lot has been talked about this offseason about this game. I think probably late kick was the one that made this game uh, kind of a hot topic, a hot pick in YouTube circles and in college football. In general, whether that be mainstream media or here on YouTube. Um, there's a few people out there picking against our Tigers this Monday night or this weekend. This official first weekend of college football, if you don't count week 0 that was last weekend. So just kind of general thoughts before we dive into kind of depth charts and then offense versus defense.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it. There's a lot's been made about this game. Duke is a team that was coming off of a 9-win season. Uh, great job under for a first year coach and Mike Elko. Winning 9 games at Duke. That is a feat. And so, Clemson coming into the offseason came into the offseason with a lot of questions. They've done some retooling, new starting quarterback, new offensive coordinator. And you couple that with the perception that Florida State is taking a step forward and rising in the ACC. There's a lot of people that are kind of looking at Clemson with a lot of scrutiny, and they're looking for a spot to pick against Clemson. And this first week is a perfect opportunity. It's a road conference game against a team that had a really strong year last year that brings back a lot of that production. So it's not hard to figure out where it came from, but it does seem like it's been embellished at times a little bit. But we'll talk about the matchup and kind of what we think.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, uh, to your point, a lot has been made about this matchup, and some of it valid, some of it, in my opinion, a little off base. Um, but at the end of the day, guess what? Everything's going to be solved on the field. You got to get out there eventually and play the game. And you can't hide behind preseason rankings. You can't hide behind um, recruiting rankings and transfer portal rankings and all of that stuff. Eventually, every single one of them teams that we have either built up throughout the offseason or broke down throughout the offseason, they're going to have to take the field. And guess what? It's either going to be proven or it's going to be expelled. Whatever predictions and previews and everything that have been out there, preview magazine season and all that kind of stuff. And I cannot wait because it is week 1 of college football. It's kicking off, and I'm going to relish in every single week of this season because, as we know as college football fans, we just got done with an 8-month long off season. It's very long, so let's enjoy it while it lasts. It's week 1. Let's get into the depth charts of these two teams coming out of fall camp. As we know, fall camp is long, it's treacherous, it's hot, it's humid, it's miserable at times, especially when our Clemson Tigers move over to Jersey Meadows, where there's not all the fancy facilities over there. Dabo Swinney likes to get them over there and find out what they're made of. But let's go ahead and pull up that depth chart. Let's see if there are any surprises for this week 1 depth chart. Does anything stand out to you, Jordan Bowman, based off of this week 1 depth chart? Anything that you didn't see coming? Anything that you're kind of like, not necessarily, I don't want to say a head scratcher type moment, but just something that you were like, oh, I didn't really think that was going to happen, but okay, we'll see how that goes. Anything like that?
Yeah, I would say like really just when you look at the top of the screen, I think the first thing that jumps out to you is we've talked all off season about the position battle at left tackle. It's mainly between Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler.
Yep.
But other guys like Marcus Tate, Mitchell Mays have taken snaps there as well. But Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler are listed as co-starters. And I mean, that kind of corroborates kind of the sentiment that was being put out throughout fall camp that it was really tight and competitive. They feel like they have 2 starters, 2 guys that can go out and play at left tackle. Mm-hmm. And Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler are going to be, they're both going to play. And Dabo confirmed that in his press conference today. So we'll see where they kind of slot themselves in, because he didn't necessarily say that both of them are going to play left tackle in this game, but both are going to play. So that was kind of interesting. But I think that's kind of one of the first things that jumps off the page. I think that Tristan Lay will be the first, will trot out first, at left tackle.
That seems to
like
be,
there's a lot of fluidity there.
Yeah, that it seems to be the consensus that Tristan Lay will trot out there first, no doubt about it. But it seems that, and look, I say this with a grain of salt because Dabo has come out about the offensive line like this in past seasons. But I truly do feel that there is a difference this year. And maybe that's fool's gold, and we'll find out pretty soon, okay? But they say there is 7 offensive linemen. According to Dabo Swinney in his press conference this week, there are 7 offensive linemen that they feel like are ready to start for this Clemson Tigers team. And that's super important because that's not something that we've been able to say in a while. And it does start with Colin Sadler and Tristan Lay at the left tackle position. I think even Garrett Riley said in his press conference that both of them will play. It's just going to depend on the flow of the game and how many snaps each of them get. But they feel like they got 7 offensive linemen for sure that can go out there and play winning football. And some of those offensive linemen have a lot of flexibility. And one of the things that was really interesting to me, Jordan, was the fact that Dabo Swinney was asked a question in his press conference, and he was asked what was he most excited to see with this team taking the field this Monday night, right? What position group or what player or such and such, what are you most excited to see about this team perform in a game environment? And he mentioned first and foremost the offensive line. He said, I'm ready to see this offensive line go out here in a game environment and show what they can do, is essentially what he said. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But he really, he mentioned the offensive line first. And that's a big deal to me. Um, because I really do think that we could have a major strength on this team, and it could be out of left field for some people that don't pay attention to Clemson football maybe as closely as some of us. And it could be this offensive line that could be a strength of this offense this season. I really do think that's a possibility, and it seems like the coaches are somewhat echoing that coming into week one. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the perception of the offensive line and the actual ability, I think, of the group, I think couldn't be any more different at times. In certain parts of the fan base, there seems to be a perception that this offensive line is full of just okay average players. But when I look at this group, I think this is about as talented an offensive line as Clemson has had under Dabo. I mean, you can look at the stars, they do star rankings and all that, and those aren't everything. But they do kind of back up that sentiment. There's a lot of blue chip talent in this offensive line room right now. And I think that eventually it's going to have to show. I mean, there are guys in this room that have been here 2-3+ years now that are, stepping into, even bigger roles. And it's time. Like a Tristan Lake, former 5-star, guy that came in, wasn't exactly ready to play right away. He had some developing to do physically, mentally, and his preparation got better every single step of the way. And that's something that Dabo was really complimentary of him for. And now they feel like he's ready to start at left tackle. And the great thing is you have another guy right behind him in Colin Sadler, as a true sophomore who would have played more if he wasn't injured. A former 4-star, pickup out of South Carolina, in-state kid. I think there are a lot of talented pieces in this room, and I think that Dabo seems to think so as well. But again, you got to see it first. But I'm pretty high on this offensive line. I've been high on him. I think this could be a strength of the offense this year. There's no way you return 4 or 5 starters and
Right.
all that experience from a group that I thought played really well at times last year. There's no way you get worse. So I think there's good reason to believe they'll be better. I think Thomas Austin showed kind of that they took a step under his leadership last year. Wasn't perfect, but eventually they came together. They had some really nice moments last year, and I think you're going to see year 2 of his development, his philosophy kind of shine through. So I'm really high on this group, and I think this matchup in particular with Duke, I think gives them a really good opportunity to show what they're capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple other position groups that jumped out on this depth chart, if you will, is a Tyler Brown, right? Him coming in and kind of being the guy behind an Antonio Williams. Okay, this is a guy who just enrolled in Clemson. Literally, like he got on campus like maybe 2 months ago, right before fall camp. He was a summer enrollee. He hasn't had a lot of time to pick up the offense, but guess what? All these coaches have talked about his athletic ability, his ability with the ball in his hand, and how quickly he has picked up this offense and how quickly he has retained knowledge when it comes to the college level and learning the nuances of receiver at the college level. That's one of the things. The other one is over on the other side of the ball. You got Peter Woods. This guy's been talked about since spring, right? He's been talked about since spring ball. And obviously, he has earned the opportunity to play a lot of ball. He's going to be on the field early. He's going to be on the field often. Those are kind of the two names that hit pretty substantially when you look at this depth chart. What do you think about those two guys and their spot on the depth chart? Does it surprise you at all, or is it kind of what you thought it would be?
No, it's exactly what I thought it would be. I mean, I thought defensively, I thought the depth chart was going to be pretty straightforward. I don't really see really any surprises necessarily on this list. Um, yeah, I mean, when you look, you go through every position group. I mean, you see XT and TJ Parker, who has earned the chance to be a second string. Defensive tackle Peter Woods, a co-starter at both defensive tackle spots.
Yeah.
I mean, with everything you've heard about him, throughout this offseason, it was an inevitability really that he would be good enough to
TJ
be considered a starter.
TJ Parker's another guy that I forgot to mention in that
Yeah.
is he seems to have passed some more veteran guys or some guys that have been on the roster a little bit longer than him because they're not listed and he is. So
Yeah, I mean, you think about guys like, I mean, you have some freshmen and AJ Hoffler, David Ojebwe that came in, but he also seems to have passed up some veterans. Cade Denhoff is listed at the other defensive end spot at the second string, but Zaire Patterson is not even listed, which
that's
it
interesting.
doesn't surprise me. You just from the discussion about him is just there still needs to be that he's still going through that growth period and he still has to commit to being to his preparation and all of that and being in the right headspace.
Cade Denhoff seems to have committed a little bit more. I mean, he is listed behind the other defensive end position. So he does look to have at least bought in a little bit more, given the coaching staff a little bit more of what they were looking for, that buy-in, that just everyday consistency that they were looking for from, him.
Yeah, and we definitely heard more positive things about Cade Denhoff coming out of the spring and fall camp. So again, like all of this, it doesn't surprise me. It's nice to a name that we haven't really talked about much because he redshirted last year. I think in the safety position, free safety position, Kylan Griffin backing up Jalen Phillips. He came in with T.J. Dudley. They were high school teammates, and he's kind of quietly just worked his way into the two deep.
Yeah.
Haven't heard a ton about him, but he clearly there's a belief and he's grown. He didn't play much at all last year, and now he's in the two deep at safety. So that's really intriguing, and I'm excited to see more of him. I thought he was a really interesting prospect, coming out of high school, and that's cool to see. Linebacker, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you've got Wade Woodaz and Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter. We know those three guys are considered the starters. Jamal Anderson, we've heard great things about him, coming into his freshman year, true freshman year. Kobe McLeod and
heard a lot about
Creighton
him.
Well.
Yep.
Yeah. Heard a lot about those guys. And Wade Woodaz is listed. I do think it's interesting that Wade Woodaz is listed as the backup Will. That just shows kind of how versatile Wade is, and he's going to be playing a lot of different positions. They've been moving him around a lot, so thought that was interesting to see. But other than that, Khalil Barnes, true freshman, we know that he's been a star and as a true freshman. Just made plays, came in really ready and beyond his years, ready to play. And that this was like one of the least surprising things ever. If you watched his high school tape, kid could play. He was just, he was playing. He was kind of from an under-recruited high school. Really didn't start picking up offers till his senior year. He was a Wake Forest commit, and then he got interest from Notre Dame and Clemson, and a lot of other schools started to get in on him. But this was I think it was a great late grab for Clemson in that cycle. And then, you look at the corners, I think everything is pretty straightforward. Sheridan Jones, Nate Wiggins, your two starters that to be expected. And then, the true sophomores are Toriano Pride, Jaden Lucas. And
Mm-hmm.
those guys are expected to step into bigger roles. Jaden Lucas dealt with injuries last year,
Yep.
but really started to come on and made some plays late in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Toriano Pride, he was kind of thrown into the fire a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
You saw him grow as well. And then you look at the true freshmen like Shelton Lewis. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I hope I didn't do that on the screen. But you see the true freshmen and Shelton Lewis and Avion Terrell, who have also been making plays and we've heard a lot of positive things about. So
Right.
really the defense side of things doesn't really surprise me that much.
Mm-hmm.
I One thing I will point out is defensive tackle. No Trey Williams in the depth chart. I know he's been limited. I think he was finally in the green jersey this week.
Yeah,
But
Dabo talked about him and how he's almost ready to go.
yeah,
Just still a little bit limited, I think. But he's saying that he will be ready to go. So whatever that means, that could be coach speak, that could be any number of things. But he says Trey Williams will be ready to go. So we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. I
But
still have a lot. I have, I think Trey Williams is extremely talented as well, and you've seen flashes of it. Hasn't really been a true starter at any point, but he's played a good amount of snaps. Him and Peyton Page. So,
right.
um, really excited to see. I'm excited to see how Peyton Page has grown too. I think that this defensive tackle group is as deep as you'll find in the country. So this is, it's a I think Trey Williams and Peyton Page would start for a good bit of Power Five teams, and you have them as third and not even listed on your depth chart. So
It's
that's
crazy.
incredible.
Crazy times. Yeah, man. Look, from a health standpoint, I think Clemson is probably in the best position we've been in a long time, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. And that's really just why I'm excited to get into this season, to start this. Um, Kicking. You pull up the Clemson special teams here. Kicking is going to be an unknown early this season. You got Robert Gunn right there on the top of the depth chart for place kicker, a guy that has an immensely talented leg, a guy that nobody doubts the strength of his leg. It's just simply been his accuracy, and his consistency with putting the ball in the right place at the right time. Seems to be he's gotten his legs under him this offseason, especially in fall camp. There's a lot of good stuff coming out about him. Dabo Sweeney, I know, was quoted as mentioning, he kicked it from 70 to win the national title in one of their scrimmages or one of their practices this fall, which is, an encouraging thing. However, I hope we never have to kick it from 70, and then you got Aiden Swanson at punter. Hopefully he's a lot more consistent than he was last season. Me, last season, I was not a huge fan of Aiden Swanson. I think he was super inconsistent. He was really hit or miss last season. He'd hit a great punt, and then he'd hit 3 or 4 terrible punts in a row, right? So need a lot more consistency out of the punting game. One of the big things that I do like coming out is that you see Tyler Brown's name there as backup for both punt return and kick return. I would like to see him take a bigger role because the coaches have talked so much about his ability to be a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. I would prefer to see a guy like Tyler Brown with the ball in his hands on punt return and kick return, rather than our starters like Antonio Williams and Will Shipley out there taking those super risky receptions on punt and kick return. That's just my opinion as a fan. look, I know you're going to put your most dynamic person out there. You're going to put the person out there that you're most comfortable with. But I would really like to see Tyler Brown kind of take over that position, especially for this season, because Will Shipley and Antonio Brown or excuse me, Antonio Williams, in
Antonio Brown.
in my in my opinion, are just so important and so pivotal for this offense this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the special teams. I think this group has a lot to prove. That's for sure. I mean, we know how talented Robert Gunn is. Has a howitzer for a leg, and he can do everything that you ask him to. As far as distance, but the consistency is something that they've been trying to work on, and the improvement I think has been that you've heard about the improvements he's made. But at the end of the day, you got to see it. He's replacing a longtime starter in BT Potter. He has a lot of Clemson's kicking records. So you're going to come in and be expected, fair or not, to have similar consistency. And then punter, we've gone ad nauseum about punting and how at times it hurt Clemson last year, the inability to flip the field at key points. The hope is the offense will be in less situations where they'll have to do that, but it's nice because as good as Clemson's offense may be, possibly, they're not going to score every drive, and being able to pin teams back inside the 20, inside the 10, make them go on longer drives. I mean, that changes the complexion of the game. And Aiden Swanson, he was very inconsistent last year at doing that. But, he is the experienced guy. He's been in the program a long time. He's going to have to make those improvements. And then we talked about the special teams, the return game. Antonio Williams, Will Shipley, same as last year. But having Tyler Brown back there as an option, I think, is really exciting. I think his speed was really evident coming out of high school. That's all they've talked about. He's come in ready. He's just a guy that makes plays. I'd like to see him get some opportunities on Monday night as well, and kind of take some pressure off of your two of your best offensive players. So you're muted.
I would say, yeah. Look, the special teams is going to be super important for Clemson this year. As we know, that was a pivotal moment last year in the reason that we lost the South Carolina game. So, yeah, let's have some improvement on that side of the ball, or that third dimension of the game, if you will, and maybe get some guys that aren't so pivotal to our offensive success. Not that Tyler Brown won't be, because judging by what the coaches say about him, he's going to be a playmaker for this Clemson offense all season. But at the end of the day, I think, to be honest, he's not as pivotal as a Will Shipley and a Antonio Brown. So hopefully he gets his opportunities on
Antonio Brown.
Or Antonio Williams, excuse me. My bad.
Steelers.
I'll get my life together here.
I hope we don't have Antonio Brown on our team. No.
All right. So let's transition to the Duke defense versus the Clemson offense. Okay. As we know, this Duke team is returning a ton of starters. 18 of 21, if I'm correct, returning starters for the Duke Blue Devils. They return literally pretty much their entire team, outside of a couple guys. This is a team that last year, I think, lost a total of 4 games by maybe, 14 points last season. So they played a lot of close games last year. So this is a team that is not going to give up. This is a team that does not quit. This is a team that is going to make you finish games. And that's going to be the important part this week. Clemson is going to have to come in here. They're going to have to punch Duke in the mouth, and they're going to have to finish the game because Mike Elko coached teams. Look, this defense is not going to quit. They're going to keep coming after you play after play. They're going to do max effort. This team is a team that runs to the ball, okay? Because if I'm not mistaken, last year they led the nation in fumble recoveries. And if you lead the nation in fumble recoveries, what does that tell me? That tells me that you have multiple defenders on every single play that are hustling to the ball. They are running to the ball, they are finishing plays, they are getting off of their blocks, and they are not giving up, right? So, and then they were second in overall turnover margin, right? So, this is a team that created a lot of opportunities for their offense last season. Now, this defense did a great job for their offense last season. They're well coached, they have discipline, all of the stuff above. They're very experienced, obviously, because they have a ton of dudes coming back. And their head coach is a very defensive minded coach, right? So, what are your takeaways on Clemson's offense going against this very experienced, very veteran defense of the Duke Blue Devils?
Yeah, you kind of hit. You kind of hit on it. I mean, when you talked about the turnover margin, when you talked about how this defense flies to the ball, I mean, this is a defense that's going to try to force turnovers, make Clemson make mistakes. They're going to be aggressive with their blitz packages. They're going to do a lot to try and confuse Cade, especially knowing that this is Cade's first, regular season start on the road. That they're going to do a lot to try to confuse Cade. That's going to be the mantra. They're going to walk guys up to the line of scrimmage, drop them back. They're going to do a lot of stuff, different pressure packages, stunts. You're going to see a lot of different stuff, and they're going to try to give Cade's eyes a lot to look at, and that's something that they did a lot last season. They did it to affect with a lot of against a lot of quarterbacks, and that's how they forced a lot of turnovers. So I think Clemson, from this standpoint, they're going to have to take care of the ball. This team, not only did they force turnovers, they were extremely opportunistic too. They, were one of the nation's leader in points off turnovers as well. So they're going to, they've converted a lot of those turnovers into points. So Cade taking care of the football, the running backs, ball security. They're going to try to strip the ball and try to force fumbles. That's kind of I think that should be the number one thing, because I think this offense, Clemson's offense, matches up pretty well on paper with this defense. So I think the goal, and I think you heard Dabo talk about it in the press conference, don't lose to Clemson. I think that's kind of what that should be what the mentality is you're better than them. You should be able to move the ball pretty consistently and put up points, but it's all about, are you going to make the mental mistakes, the procedural errors, all of that kind of stuff that really, really hurt teams against Duke last year. And so I think the game plan coming in, I'm really interested to see what that looks like, because I think this team, I think Clemson wants to be balanced. They're going to want to run the ball, but they're also going to try to hit explosive plays, because one thing that this defense didn't do very well last year was defend against big pass plays. They were one of the worst teams in the nation that explosive pass rate allowed. I believe they're like 106th, 107th. So while this defense is aggressive, they fly around, that ultimately, consequentially, leaves their defensive backs on islands. And this is not a very large and physical, defensive back group. They lost some guys. They brought in some transfers like Al Blades Jr. from Miami to try to supplement that. But this Duke defense is opportunistic but undersized, and especially in the secondary. And I think that's where Clemson will try to exploit some matchups there, because I do think you have some physical advantages at wide receiver, at tight end, that could pose some problems for this defense. So if and I think the offensive line is going to have to give Cade time. This Duke defensive line has given was really good last year. They bring back all of them. So I think Clemson just needs to not lose to themselves. Don't beat yourselves. That's kind of the mantra. Be balanced, be physical, and take shots when they're there. And I think you'll come out with a pretty convincing win. It seems like UConn has just scored on NC State. Shout out to Jim Mora.
UConn has just scored on NC State.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to them.
I might have to put that game on before the Florida game.
Yeah, congratulations to them. I don't know, man. Wow. NC State, dude. Whatever, man. Surprise. Dave Dorn doing his thing. Yep. Anyway, let's continuing with the Duke defense versus Clemson offense. Look, I think this Clemson offense has a lot to prove coming into the season. There's no doubt about it. Look, I'm a Clemson fan. I got the orangest covered glasses that there possibly is, right? However, I am a realist. I do think there are going to be growing pains for this offense throughout the season. I don't think we hit the ground running 1,000 miles an hour. I don't think Cade throws for 400 yards in the first game, and Will Shipley and Phil Maffa combine for another 250. Like, look, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I don't think we come out putting up Madden numbers. I think there's going to be an adjustment period for this Clemson offense. However, I do not think this Duke team is equipped to deal with this Clemson offense. I really don't. I look forward, personally, if I'm talking about strictly the Clemson offense, I look forward to the creativity that I'm expecting to see as a Clemson fan. When I look at Garrett Riley, I expect to see creative offensive plays. I expect to see exploitation of weaknesses of the defense that we are playing that particular week. I expect to see exploitation of our strengths on offense, i.e., a 6'6" tight end, i.e., a quarterback that can absolutely make defenses miss in open space, i.e., a wide receiver called Bo Collins that can absolutely go up and get the ball, or Adam Randall, or a burner like Cole Turner, or any other of the guys, skill guys on the team, right? I expect to see our offensive line greatly improve this season. Okay, so first and foremost, heading into week one for me, one of the big things that I want to see is I want to see this team attack like other Clemson teams have failed to do. And what that means to me is running the ball, establishing the line of scrimmage. I want to see this offensive line reestablish the line of scrimmage for a majority of the game. That's what I want to see as a Clemson fan. Also, what I want to see is I want to see Clemson attack the middle of the field, whether that be the tight end or the slot receiver or the outside guy. I don't care. Attack the middle of the field, run the ball at will. That's the two things that I really want to see out of this Clemson offense, and I think they can do it against this Duke defense. I understand that Duke returns a lot of talent. I understand that they return the bulk of their snaps on defense. However, I think Clemson out-talents Duke every day of the week, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Duke should not be able to hang with a Clemson team. It just is what it is. I'm not disrespecting Duke in any way. I think they had a great season last year. They played a lot of close games. Their guys play hard. They don't quit. They have a tenacity about them that seems to make other teams want to quit because they are just that kind of nuisance that just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and will not relent. And I respect that. And you expect that out of an Elko defense. I expect that on Monday night. But I expect for Clemson's talent in quarterback and running back and receiver and offensive line to lean on them. It may be close for one or two quarters, but I expect Clemson to pull away in the third and fourth quarter due to just a talent gap between these two teams.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you mentioned something. The attack in the middle of the field. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Make these Duke. We talk about Duke and how much they're returning, but they did lose their top two tacklers at linebacker. I think that's a really big deal. Those guys were really productive last season. Make these these new starters tackle. Get your playmakers the ball out in space.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a lot to look at. Do motions, shifts. Do Antonio Williams on like a jet sweep motion and then just hand it off to Shipley or something. Just do things to get this Duke defense confused, because I think that's something that Clemson didn't do enough of last year, is really just giving their opponents a lot to look at. I think with Garrett Riley, I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. And it really is just about being consistent, disciplined, procedurally, don't do penalties, all of that, no false starts. I think those are the things that I think if you keep those at bay for the most part, I think this offense will have enough success to where this game is a fairly convincing victory.
Yeah, I expect that. And at the end of the day, look, you have to lean on your talent. And I think Garrett Riley, from everything I've heard from him so far, will do that. So let's move on to Clemson's defense versus the Duke offense. Okay. Clemson defense returning a lot of starters. They're also returning a lot of two deep talent. Let me explain. The secondary last year was riddled with injury, right? However, that turned out to be a good thing for the 2023 Clemson team, because a lot of our two deep guys that are going into this season as two deep guys that we mentioned prior to when we went over the depth chart for the week 1 matchup between the Duke Blue Devils. Those guys got a ton of snaps. They had to grow up quickly. They had their feet held to the fire, and they became better players for it, right? So this Clemson defense grew up last season, especially in the secondary. I think they are a year better, a year wiser. They have their veteran guys back as long as they can stay healthy. But if they cannot, guess what? These young guys got a ton of experience last year. I do think we're a little light at the interior linebacker position. We're also a little light at the defensive end position. However, I do think we got guys that can flex back and forth between those two positions, right? I look for a huge game from Xavier Thomas. This guy has had probably one of the most roller coaster college careers that could possibly happen. He came in on a high. He was a 3-and-done guy. He got injured. He got COVID. He dealt with a lot of personal issues. But guess what? He's back. He's ready. And I think he has an absolute monster season this year. That's going to be paired with a very veteran defensive tackle group, and Ruka Rohoro and Tyler Davis. And then on the other side, you got Justin Maskell. You got Kate Denhoff over there. I mean, you got a ton of experience coming back on this defense. I think they're ready. If you heard Wes Goodwin's interview this week heading into the Duke game, it made me even more confident on this defense. Wes Goodwin looks like he is ready for this season to start. Like, Wes Goodwin, to me in that interview, looked like he could not wait for this season to start, because I think he hears a lot of the exterior noise that's going on about Clemson's defense and about, more specifically, him as a defensive coordinator. He hears it and he's like, hey, that was my first year ever being a play caller, ever being a defensive coordinator. I learned a ton. And guess what? When you hear from the individual players on this defense, they believe in Wes Goodwin. And what that tells me is that he knows what he's doing, he knows what he's talking about, and I think it's a much improved year for this Clemson's defense. I think Wes Goodwin, all questions for whoever has questions out there about Wes Goodwin, I think they'll be answered this year, and I think they'll be answered with a resounding "you should have believed in me" type of deal. Although this Duke offense is, somewhat dynamic. They got a quarterback that can absolutely extend plays. He can throw on the run. He can do his thing. They have a big time wide receiver that Nate Wiggins is going to be probably paired up with, that he's going to have to lock down, right? So there's a lot of different nuances to the matchup here, but I'm really excited to see this second year iteration of a Wes Goodwin defense post Brent Venables.
Absolutely. But kind of getting deeper into the matchup, I think this defense, this Duke offense is, like you said, is really dynamic. They did not lose. They really lost nobody. Obviously, it starts with Riley Leonard at quarterback, but every single player that carried the ball for Duke last year is back, whether it was in the receiving game or the running game. That doesn't happen very often. I just letting y'all know that is not something that most teams typically do or get back. So this group has played a lot of snaps together. They're comfortable. They know the what is expected of them offensively. They know what their strengths are. But it all starts with Riley Leonard. I mean, they're going to use him in design quarterback runs. He can extend plays. He has a really, really good arm. I think people don't really talk about that enough. They're just like, oh man, he's such a load to deal with in the run game. He was their leading rusher last year. But in reality, Riley Leonard has a legit NFL upside, because of his arm talent. And so I think combined with that, I think Duke's receivers are experienced. I don't think they're out of this world. But they're good enough. They make plays, and Riley Leonard is a good enough quarterback to get them the ball, and that makes them dangerous. So having that dual threat ability, that true dual threat ability, is going to be tough for this Clemson defense to stop. I think the good thing is I think if you can, I think it starts with Duke's run game. I think if this defense is stout against the run game and kind of makes them one-dimensional, I think this should be a pretty easy matchup. I wouldn't say easy is the wrong word, but I think it makes it a lot. It makes it a lot more manageable.
A favorable matchup.
Yeah. And I think the good thing is the speed that Clemson has on defense, because Duke is going to try to get out in space. They're going to move guys around. I think Clemson has the speed on this defense, especially a linebacker, to really neutralize a lot of that, and it gives you a lot more flexibility. I think they also have a really good tight end as well, so I think that's something that you have to keep in mind. So I think this is going to be a tricky matchup. It's a really good test for this defense early on. But I do like that. I think Clemson will be able to win up front. Duke's offensive line is experienced, but I think this defensive line will be able to have success and move them off the ball and kind of make them a little bit more one-dimensional. And I think you have to mitigate how much Riley Leonard makes plays. That's really what it comes down to. But I think this is the matchup that I think is the most key in determining the outcome of this game, because I think Riley Leonard is going to have a big game in order to pull off the upset. So keeping him at bay, I think, makes everything else a lot easier to manage. So it starts with Riley Leonard. It ends with Riley Leonard. If you can neutralize him in the run game, especially, and force Duke to be a little bit more pass heavy, I think that allows guys like Xavier Thomas, Peter Woods, Rook Rower, Tyler Davis. It allows you to get more aggressive in your pass rush, all of that, and getting them to third and longs. I think that would be really ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's going to be a great game. I cannot wait for Clemson to be a standalone game on Monday night. I'm I'm not happy that I have to wait until the absolute end of the weekend, the last game of week one, but I'm glad Clemson is a standalone game because I truly do think it's going to be beneficial for Clemson's brand. I think it's going to be beneficial for the program, and I think this is going to pay dividends because we are going to let the country know what this Clemson Tigers team is about. Whether that is it's more of the same of the last two seasons we've seen, or it is, hey, this team has turned a page. They have finally leaned into their talent. They finally got the right coach on staff as far as the offense goes, and we're full steam ahead, heading towards a playoff, possibly a national championship berth. Um, I think I think it's that type of season. We'll see. We'll see how this Clemson Tigers team goes, but there's going to be a lot to be said um, after week one, I'm sure. Everybody's going to be watching Clemson Duke week one. Everyone. And I can't wait till we see the result. Let's transition into special teams. Okay. We've talked about our kicking situation, right? We got a returning starter um, in Robert Gunn, right? We got, or excuse me, a new starter in Robert Gunn. We got a returning starter in Aiden Swanson. Um, I wasn't the biggest fan of Aiden Swanson, our punter, last season. I thought he was way too inconsistent. I thought he did not get the job done. However, how do you see our special team shaping up this year? Um, is it something that's going to cost Clemson like it did last season? We saw the special teams cost Clemson last season, especially in the South Carolina game with that weird handoff slash pitch special teams play that was fumbled that we don't want to talk about, that we're not going to dive any further into than what I just did. And then do you see um, the younger guys stepping up and becoming more of a pronounced emphasis on the special teams versus a guy like Will Shipley and others on the special teams?
Yeah, I mean, really, my take on special teams I just it's hard to expect them to be, you know, a strength of this team because of the uncertainty. Um, I don't want them to be the reason Clemson loses games or be a detriment. I thought they were on the way to being a strength of the team last year at the beginning of last year. You know, they were blocking kicks. You know, BT Potter was making you know, he couldn't miss, and um, you know, it really was just Aiden, you know, the complaints about Aiden Swanson. That was really the only questions about the special teams. But then, you know, punt coverage was poor. You know, you had those punts
Mm-hmm.
blocked against Notre Dame. Um, he just had a lot of issues, turnovers. It just kind of fell apart towards the end, and I would like to see that be a little bit different this year.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's kind of just a. I think for this week, I think it's a don't lose us the game, and
Yeah.
I think things should be okay.
Right.
Um, but you know, in the return game, I'd like to see again, like I mentioned earlier in the show. You know, Antonio Williams, Will Shipley. We know that they can make plays in the return game, but you also want to see some of the younger guys get in. Um, Tyler Brown, especially. Uh, but
I'd
I
I'd
don't have any.
honestly I'd like to see Tyler Brown take over all kick return duties for the
Yeah, that would be
Tigers.
cool. That'd be nice.
Um,
I'd like to see that speed up. You know.
I really would. They talk about his dynamic speed. They talk about so much about him with the football in his hands and how he just kind of knows where to go when the football's in his hands. And I think that just mitigates some risk for a Will Shipley and you know I look, I just think it would be better for this team if Tyler Brown truly is that dynamic with the football in his hands. Why not put him out there? He's not going to get as many touches as Antonio Williams. He's not going to get as many touches as Will Shipley. He's not going to get as many touches as a lot of these wide receivers. So, in my mind, I would give him touches on the special teams, right? Punt and kick return. Why not? Let him be dynamic out there. If he can break a big punt return or a big kick return, that could be a game changer. We've seen that in the past in college football. Special teams is kind of one of those forgotten, thirds of the game. But, when it fails you, it sucks, and you're like, oh man, that was terrible. Our kicker sucks, or our punt returner sucks, or our kick returner sucks, or so on and so forth. So, I would love to see him take over those duties if he is truly that dynamic with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I agree. Don't lose us the game. Special teams.
That's right.
Don't lose the game. And hopefully the offense is productive enough to for where you don't have to see too much punting, at least. And Robert Gunn only has to kick PATs. That would be awesome. But yeah, let's go ahead and give our picks against the spread and our final score predictions and call it a show.
Absolutely, man. Look, we've been on here an hour already. I cannot believe how fast this has gone by.
Yeah.
But we are trying to keep this show as close to an hour as we possibly can. So we're going to move on with the picks against the spread. I put a poll on the channel earlier today, and Clemson was minus 13. Duke was plus 13. That's the pick against the spread. We had 80 votes on the channel, Jordan. 89% said they picked Clemson minus 13, and 11% of them said that they picked Duke plus 13. So, what is your pick against the spread before we get into our last segment, which will be our score predictions?
Yeah, I listen. When I look at this matchup, I think there are a lot of things that Clemson has. I think Clemson matches up well with this Duke team from a physical standpoint. And I'm gonna sort of bet on this Clemson offense being explosive enough to take advantage of some of the inconsistencies and weaknesses of this Duke defense. I like Clemson anywhere. I've seen 13. I've seen 12.5. I think anything under 2 touchdowns, I think I really like Clemson a lot here. I think they're going to cover. I'm going to take Clemson in the points. And I think they win pretty convincingly. But it could be a game that is tight for a little bit and Clemson pulls away late. But either way, I think Clemson can get to a 2-score lead and hold on to it. So I like Clemson here. And I'm feeling pretty confident about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my pick against the spread, Clemson minus 13. If I had to bet $100 right now, I would pick Clemson minus 13. I'm that confident in this pick. I absolutely think the Tigers are going to come out and make a statement against the Duke Blue Devils. I think the Tigers have heard all offseason about all the narrative of Duke having a great season. And although I do agree that Duke had a good season, I think Mike Elko is a great coach. I think he is going to have a very successful career at Duke. How long that career is at Duke is probably completely up to him, because I expect people to come knocking on his door very soon if he keeps this success when it comes to Duke football. However, I think Clemson is going to out physical this team. I think they are going to out talent this team. And that's no disrespect to Duke or anybody on their roster or any of their fans. I just think Clemson is too good for this Duke team. Yes, I know they won 9 games last season. I know they only lost 4 games by a total of 14 points. However, they did not see a single team as talented or as physical as this Clemson Tigers team last season. So, Duke, welcome to Big Boy ACC football. Welcome to the Clemson Tigers, and they're going to come in there. They're going to beat you by at least 2 touchdowns, in my opinion.
Well, we are in agreement, and as Florida goes 3-and-out on their first drive.
All right, guys. Let's get into the last segment of the show, and that will be our score predictions. What I want you guys to do tonight in the comment section, please, in the live chat right now, go ahead. I know some of you have already put your score predictions in the live chat. Please go ahead and put your score predictions in again right now. Me and Jordan are going to reveal our score predictions, and then we will get into yours for a minute or two, and then we will get out of here because it is time to go watch college freaking football. Let's do it. Jordan, what is your score prediction for the Clemson Tigers against the Duke Blue Devils this Monday night? Prime time.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, we both are in agreement. We think Clemson covers. I don't think it's going to be this otherworldly beatdown. I think there's going to be some growth. There's going to be some mistakes. There's going to be some hiccups. That's bound to happen. And I think Duke is going to. Oh my God, Utah just scored! Wow, is that the first play? Touchdown! Wow, sorry, got excited. But man, what a play call. But yeah, I like Clemson 35 to 20. I think that's kind of where I'm feeling. I think Clemson is in control of the game. I think Duke, hits some plays because I expect there to be some hiccups defensively, really on both sides of the ball. But I think Clemson is going to hit enough explosive plays. I think you're going to see a big day from the running backs, and I think Cade Klubnik is going to manage the game really well. I don't expect him to light the world on fire. I think efficiency, completing his passes, getting the ball out to his playmakers, I think that's going to be the key to success and hit the explosive plays when they're there. But I'm not expecting Cade Klubnik to throw for like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns or anything like that. I think it's going to be a complete and efficient performance for Cade, and the offense looking balanced. So,
what was your score prediction?
35-20.
35-20. Okay. All right. My score prediction for the Clemson Tigers versus the Duke Blue Devils. I'm going to go 31-10. The Clemson Tigers roll against the Duke Blue Devils. I just think this Clemson offense is too much. I think this defense is absolutely ready and willing and just ready to absolutely go against another offense that is not wearing orange. Wes Goodwin made me super excited about this defense. I watched his interview today. I cannot wait to see this defense against another offense this season. It starts with the Duke Blue Devils. Unfortunately for them, I expect a 31-10 score. We'll see who's closer. Jordan Bowman's at 35-20. I'm at 31-10. We'll see who's closer. Let's see who's up here in the chat getting some score prediction in. Steel Gamble says, I think Cade goes for 300 yards. Okay. I hope so. I hope you're right.
If that happens, I hope it's how does that 300 yards look? Does he throw 54 passes like he did in the Orange Bowl? I hope not. If Cade is like 8, 9, 10 yards per attempt, like 23 for 30 for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, that would be dope. That means they hit some. Cade was efficient and he hit big plays. That would be awesome.
The hard take makes a great point here. He says, I want to see Thomas running out the game late. Let's all hope that happens, because if that happens, it's going to be a great night to be a Clemson Tiger, as it always is. WB2DX gets in, says 27-10 Tigers. Steel Gamble says, can't wait to watch Uncle Lou laugh at Florida tonight. Yeah, it's going to be great. I hope you guys are watching the game. Said just look at the spring game. Let's see. John Sarian says Utah starting their second and third string QB and just smoked.
It's their third string. Their second string is hurt.
Jesus. Oh, that's terrible.
They just did a 70-yard touchdown
terrible.
on the first play. That was
incredible.
incredible. I was like, I looked up at the screen and looked down, and I'm like in that split second as the play was happening, I looked up, I glanced up, and then I looked down, and I see a Utah defender running free, and
that's absolutely
for
crazy.
A touchdown. I was like, wow, a Utah receiver.
Steel Gamble gets in and says Riley had been there for a full month when the spring game was played. Plus, he had many starters not playing. Absolutely. I agree with you, Steel Gamble. Clemson, 45. Duke, 17, according to Isaac. That is an amazing score, sir. I hope you are correct. That would be a resounding
statement.
But without further ado, we're going to get out of here tonight, guys. I appreciate you guys getting in here. You guys are what makes this show possible. You guys are what makes this show great. Thank you so much for getting into the live chat. If you have not hit that subscribe button already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. This is a live video. Share this video with all of your college football community, all of your college football fans out there. We appreciate you coming by. Jordan Bowman, please send the people off. We will see you guys immediately following the Clemson Tigers win on Monday night. Me and Jordan will be right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel to recap that victory.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you on Monday night. Hopefully following a Clemson Tigers victory. And before you leave, make sure you hit that like button, do all those things. But until next time, we will see you on Monday.
That's right. I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He is Jordan Bowman. We'll see you Monday, immediately following that Clemson win. See you then, guys.